We'll have a third reading of 2013-57, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a contract supplemental agreement with Burns and McDonnell Engineering Company Incorporated for construction services at the Jefferson City Memorial Airport.
Matt.
Again, this is the second contract in that trio. This is for the construction services and testing. A lot of federal requirements obviously going into this project with the majority of it being funded through MoDOT. The contract value is just under $100,000. It's $99,690, not to exceed, for those services.
Any questions of Matt on 57? Seeing none, debate. Roll call, please.
Hussey.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Branch.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Carroll.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Motion passes. The next bill will actually have Mr. Scrivener run, please. Third reading of 2013-58.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Meyer Electric Company Incorporated for the airfield lighting electrical vault and airfield lighting control system project.
Matt, could you
Thank
tell
you.
us about this?
Yeah, this is the third bill in that group, and it's the actual construction contract with Meyer Electric, a local electrical contracting company. I think the clerk already did a good job of indicating what it was for, but the contract value is just under $375,000. And on all of these last three projects we mentioned are the dollar amounts. The city share of these are actually about 6% of those costs. So that's it's a very good good grant program for the city. Now within those, if you look closely, you know, some of them we have to 10% match, some of them 5% match, but because of the overall dollar value to get this project in the ground, it's about a 6% match, if you will.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Marash? Mr. Henry?
Matt, and those funds were already from the city. Those matches were already kind of accounted for, basically, already.
Correct. The city has some funds in the sales tax allotted to the airport, and those are budgeted along with the grant numbers.
Okay, any other questions? Any debate? If not, roll call, please.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Branch.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Carroll.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye. And the motion passes. I'll turn the meeting back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we'll have a third reading of 2013-59.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri pertaining to maximum fines.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This raises the municipal court's authority to fine up to from $500 to $1,000. Felt it's appropriate given that it's been $500 for as long as anyone can remember. So it's appropriate to increase the fine. I believe we're authorized to do that, as many constitutional charter cities have already raised their fine limit to $1,000.
Any questions of staff? Debate? Roll call, please.
Prather.
Aye.
Schulte.
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Branch.
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Carroll.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Hussey.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have third reading of 2013-61.
An ordinance amending Chapter 19, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by adding a new subsection pertaining to mandatory court appearances for excessive speeding.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In order to get our court software to work properly with the police tickets and such, we needed to have a separate section identified for speeding over 25 miles an hour because it is a court-mandated appearance. It doesn't create any new offenses. It just lets the individual know that they can't pay that ticket out of court.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Bob.
I want to make sure I understood you correctly. I think you said if they're speeding over 25 miles an hour, you meant over 25 miles over the speed limit?
I'm sorry, yes, 25 miles an hour over the speed limit, the
Okay.
posted speed limit. Yeah, you're right. That does make a huge difference.
Okay.
Especially with our hills. All right. Any other questions or debate on 61? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Branch,
Aye.
Bray,
Aye.
Carroll,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have third reading of 2013-62.
an ordinance amending Chapter 19, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri pertaining to pedestrians on sidewalks.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This ordinance came about from a citizen concern that the code wasn't particularly clear and could be read to say that people using a wheelchair or power wheelchair could not utilize the sidewalk. So we wanted to go through the code and make a few technical corrections so that it was clear. So our intent here is to make it clear that people using a sidewalk people using a wheelchair or power wheelchair can use a sidewalk if they choose. But because I know there's been some questions out in the public, I also want to state here that it doesn't require them to use the sidewalk. If they need to use the street, they certainly can. Just as they can go anywhere that any other pedestrians afoot could go.
All right, any questions on 62? Yes, sir, Bob.
If someone's in a wheelchair and using the street, are they considered a pedestrian? I mean, do they have all
Yes.
the rights and privileges that a pedestrian would have? And
Correct. The first section
responsibilities?
of the code change says that a pedestrian is not only a person afoot, but it's also a person using a wheelchair or power wheelchair. So anywhere a pedestrian can be, and all the rules that apply to pedestrians apply to people afoot or people using wheelchairs or power wheelchairs the same.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on 62? All right, roll call, please.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Branch,
Aye.
Bray,
Aye.
Carroll,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have third reading of 2013-63.
an ordinance amending Article 11, Paid Holidays of the Personnel Policy Manual by the addition of Section 11-2, Floating Holidays.
Gail.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance establishes floating holidays within the Personnel Policy Manual. The funding for this was proposed in the city administrator's budget as a gesture of appreciation for the employees during a tight economy with no pay increases. Total fiscal cost for this is $7,500. During the budget meetings, council members expressed an interest in this policy going through the administration committee and to the full council. So it did go to the administration committee and was voted out of the committee 3-1 to move to the full council. The ordinance itself provides 24.25 hours for fire shift personnel, 16 hours for all other full-time employees, and 8 hours for all part-time with benefit employees. The hours must be scheduled to minimize overtime costs, loss of efficiency, and departmental disruptions. To eliminate costs, transit employees will take their holidays on President's Day and Columbus Day, which are both federal and state holidays, but not city holidays currently. And there's also very low ridership on those days. Other stipulations is that the hours must be used in the fiscal year in which they are given. There's no carryover or payout of hours, and it does require funding in the budget for the hours to be given. It's not an automatic benefit in the future. There is a substitute that was presented this evening, and I will turn it over to Mr. Hilpert to explain that.
All the substitute does is, well, I guess it does two things. One, it supplementally appropriates funds from the reserve account to 4 categories: step-up pay, overtime, Social Security, and retirement. Those are all in the fire department. And the second thing that this substitute does is would make this ordinance effective after you pass the mayor's budget. The reason that just simplifies, frankly, the process, I believe anyway. So you won't need to make any amendments to the budget because this will do it for you. If you don't pass it, you don't have to worry about it in the budget. But if you do pass this, well, I guess you don't have to worry about it either way. If you pass the budget, this will be effective or not.
Okay, questions of staff? Bob?
Is there a,
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. Just a second, just a point of clarification. Should we bring up substitute first?
I would think so, and you can do it by
Okay,
voice
is there a
vote.
motion to do so? Okay, Carrie's moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded by Ken. Substitutes on the floor. Any discussion on bringing forth the substitute? Otherwise, we will vote to bring the substitute forward. You have a question about that?
Yep, I
Yes,
do.
sir.
And maybe this is the same in both bills, but you've itemized where the money is going to come from. Is there any provision to track and make sure that, and I know a budget is a plan, you don't always spend exactly what you're budgeting, but is there any way to track these expenditures and make sure that we are, so we know if this does pass and it's permitted this year, so we'll have an idea of how much we actually did spend? I know there's a lot of estimates as to what it'll be, but is there any way that we can actually track that?
I would probably defer that to the fire chief or Gail, but I would think it would be, because when they put in there for their time off, they'll have to say floating holiday, and you can go back and see what you had to pay that. If you had to call in a step-up pay person, or if you had to call in overtime, because the issue here, and again, Nathan and Gail and Jason are far more competent to talk about this than I am, but I'm going to anyway. It only comes into play if you get to that minimum manning number. So you may have someone taking their floating holiday and it doesn't affect anything at all because you don't have to call anybody in. You've got enough minimum manning. Once you hit that minimum manning, you got it.
No more money than it is. Obviously, it's not anticipated to be a lot, to occur a lot or occur often.
Mr. Schulte, I'm going to give you the short answer that, or Scrivener, I'm sorry, that looking at the IT director, he's saying yes, that we can track this.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions on the substitute? Seeing none, I feel you're ready to vote on the or bringing up the substitute. We can do it by voice vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, now we will be discussing 2013-63 as substituted. Discussion. Carrie.
Thank you. I put the funding in there just so that we could get that started in this current budget year. I know I am only as good as my employees, and whether you are an employee or a manager or a business owner, anyone on the council knows that's a fact, it's true. And as 10 councilmen here, we are only as good as our employees. We can sit here and make our policy, but we rely every day on the employees at City Hall and everybody who is in every department, from the department heads on down to everybody on staff, to carry out every decision we make. And what I'm hoping is, in this tough budget time, we can look at an alternative way that seems to at least be a way to give back. In the budget, it is a figure. We've come up with the $7,500. As Bob said, we'll track that. As Gail said, it will be looked at every year whether or not we will put it in, because next year we might find other ways, other avenues. We looked at, for example, earlier in the budget cycle, possibly a raise, something less than 0.5%. That didn't pass. This is a way to do it without adding the money into the budget. Now, there is a productivity piece, and I think we all know that. That's been discussed. How do you quantify that? I would just ask the council to look at, to focus on City Hall and our employees and say, we may lose some productivity, but we will hopefully gain it in satisfaction, and that the productivity will still come. I know that a lot of us rely on staff to be here at off times as well, whether they're department heads that attend meetings at night when they could be doing things with their kids, whether they came to Carlos and I's Saturday morning ward meeting and took several hours out of a Saturday morning to assist us and to be there for our constituents, or coming at 7:30 in the morning before they have to be at City Hall to meet with constituents out in the real world. When we call any of us, when we call on our people, they're there. They don't question it. They don't doubt it. And so the productivity piece, I ask you to look at that as well, because we do ask them to be there at off times, and the productivity will happen. We're not producing something that's not going to get produced. There could be a slight delay, but that work will still get done. I've emailed staff at night on many occasions and had replies within 5 minutes, and I know that they're not counting that time during the day. I know that they are doing their best to serve me and serve the citizens. So this is a way we can hopefully do something for the employees. Just to note, the state has 12 paid holidays plus up to 15. There are 3 holidays that are to be determined, such as the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve. So they currently have 12. We have 10. So by adding the 2, it would put us in line with other governmental agencies such as the state. I also recently learned that Columbia has 12, and they just added in this budget cycle one floating holiday, being in a similar situation, I suppose, as we are, looking at a way to give back without taking the funds directly out of the budget. So looking at raises in the past as well for our city employees, I would want to note that we haven't really been able to keep up with inflation. So although we've been able to give maybe a 1 to 2% in most of the years, I know I've been on the council 6 years now, that although we haven't been able to give as much as we probably would like, we have given something, and I know the employees are very appreciative, but we're actually falling behind because we haven't kept up with inflation. And I would just say that this would be a way we can still do something for our staff that would be beneficial, and I would say we should do it because we can. We have the resources, we have the funds, we have people that can fill in for each other and make this happen, and I really think this is the time in a tough budget year like this to put this out there and pass that. It's our responsibility to maintain employees, make sure that they have the satisfaction. What we do here passes on to the managers, to the department heads, which trickles down to every employee. So I think the decision we make tonight is an important one, and I ask for everybody's support tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments on 2013-23? Ken? Did you have some? I'm sorry. I was looking that direction. I thought you had some. Anyone else? Any other debate on this particular bill? Rick?
Well, I agree with much of what Councilwoman Carey has to say, and I want to support our employees, and I want to reward them, and I'm looking forward to a full staff review of the benefits policies and how they compare with other cities, and to look at ways of rewarding our staff based on maybe high performance and other ways that we can perform, maybe stipends and other creative ideas. But I'm against this on the grounds that we were trying to create policy through budget. We didn't have a full vetting of this, although there was a quick meeting set up off schedule that I couldn't attend, and there was information passed there that was been beneficial to us all. I don't think the vetting process has occurred, and yet we were presented with a budget, a line item, that generated just that one meeting. So I kind of object to being even put in this position to feel like I'm anti-staff, when I'm anti the way this has been brought up. I don't agree at the cost of the city. I do not agree that there's not going to be a loss of services to our citizens. When you have skeleton crews and a predominantly Friday, Monday kind of taking of these floating holidays, no doubt there'll be somebody come to the door and say, could I have this? And they'll say, I'm sorry, that person's out today. So I don't believe we've done our favor to our own citizens that are asking for services with a skeleton crew, and I don't disagree with the need to reward our staff, but I do disagree with the way this was brought through to us, and I hope my vote isn't considered anti-staff.
Any other comments or debate? Carrie?
Well, to respond to that, Rick, I would say that our discussion we've had at the council level has been, in a way, vetting this out. We have been having a more detailed discussion almost than we would have at a committee meeting. We brought it back up on a few occasions, so it's given us a chance as a council to discuss and get it out there, and and hopefully have a little bit of public input, and I've heard from a few leaders in the community who have looked at this and tend to agree that we do need to get creative sometimes in the way we do this. Now, I see your point in not creating policy, but I'm looking at this as a one-year thing. I'm looking at it as, I think you have a great point. We need to look at the policy. We should look at it long-term. We should put that on the next administration committee agenda, knowing that the time it may take to look at other creative ways, such as a stipend, such as rewarding. I know last year we did, instead of cost of living, we did merit increase, so it was more of an earned. This year, knowing we can't do increases at all, we came to this as a conclusion that would work for this year. And I would like to see this looked at only this year and look at other creative ways. But unless somebody else from the council has something to propose, I think this is the time, because we are doing the budget. And there are a lot of things in that budget that either we haven't hardly really discussed or kind of have gone through that, and I see this as policy, but at the same time, it just seems like it would make sense to go ahead and do it now. The 10 of us have discussed it, and unless there is something else brought forward, because I would be open to those other things you mentioned, but I think that could take a lengthy discussion of figuring out cost and how that's going to work, because we've never done that before. We've only done the pay increases, whereas the paid holidays, the floating holidays, we know could work. Now, stipends and other things I think we should examine. So I agree with your point, but I think that it is okay for us to take, as a council, to go ahead and decide, yes, it's okay collectively for us to move on it this year, and this year only.
Ken?
Just a couple quick points. I think there's a dollar value in there, and there is a direct cost, and I just would want to be clear that, if people vote for or against, it's not related probably to that direct cost. I think we could all agree that $7,500 in terms of a direct expense in the budget is pretty minimal, and I think I'd hate for, if this doesn't pass or if there's a no vote, to be assumed that, well, the cost of the fire department, brought this down, and that's certainly not the case. It's a philosophical issue, I think, and I understand Councilman Mihalovich's points. It comes down to whether or not you view this as a loss of productivity. If there's an increase in productivity by an increase in benefits, what's the actual overall price you could put on a floating holiday? It's very easy for some just to take total payroll and divide by about 250 and arrive at a figure. I don't think that's an exact way to do it, but some may argue the other way. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's a nice thing to do this year. It's a one-year policy. I'm okay with evaluating the benefits packages in the future as well to see if there's other things we can do to get creative. But at the same time, I think this is a good thing to do for our staff. I think it sends a good message from us on the council. It shows some positive support headed their way. Maybe it'll help boost some morale here at City Hall. I think the long-term benefit for the next year may far outweigh any cost that we think is on the table. I can't put a dollar figure on any of those things, but I just get the sense that we'll see more positive results from this policy than we would by not doing it. So I'm supportive of, in favor of the proposal as presented.
Any other comments or debate on this side? Bob?
I guess administratively, a question that came to mind after hearing Mr. Mihalovich's comments. Are there any, and I guess I'm maybe directing this at you, Nathan, has there any thought been given to a maximum number of people that might take voluntary holiday on any given day? Because as he said, I know if it were me and I had 2 days to use, I'd probably try to tack them onto the end of a weekend, or maybe onto a 3-day holiday and make it a 4-day holiday. Maybe take a day of vacation along with it and have 4 or 5 days off and actually only use maybe 1 day of vacation. Is there any thought given to that so as to keep from unnecessarily depleting the workforce?
Oh, sure. We do that every day. You know, we have employees who have sick leave that comes up or vacations and things like that. And we constantly schedule, you know, some departments that's more critical than other departments. It just kind of depends on what the function of the department is. It depends on the time of year, you know. For instance, one of the examples that just comes to my mind is in transit. They don't let anybody take off at all the first week of school because that's just the time when they're socked. And so, you know, we manage that sort of thing all the time.
I'd spoken to some staff members about this, and they kind of reminded me of how I generally treat time off, and that is when I know I'm going to be off, I work and try to get ahead to be prepared to be off, and then obviously when you come back, you work harder to catch up. So I know not everyone that works for the city is on salary, but some hourly employees. But I've been very, very impressed in the time that I've been on the council with the members of the employee group here at City Hall, both salaried staff and hourly people. And while I know there's some, people in Jefferson City that would be very opposed to this. There's some probably that support it. I along with Councilman Hussey and Councilman Carroll, I feel like that this is something that we can do this year, and it's something that I'm going to vote for, even though I know there's there's maybe reasons not to, but I just feel like our staff deserves something, so I'm going to vote for it.
Mr. Bray.
Bob, your last comment, the staff deserves something. I agree they do. Unfortunately, the budget this year does not, there's not room in it for increased salaries this year. We did learn in a previous meeting that the staff has gotten a raise for at least the last 20 years, we learned. I think it was wrong to call a special meeting of the administration committee for the sole purpose of addressing the employees' new holidays to get it back to the council. I think that in itself sends the wrong message to the public that everyone else has to wait for a regularly scheduled committee meeting. But in order to get the staff new holidays, more holidays, a special meeting is called like within 2 days to get this back to the council. And it need not have happened that way for the purpose of the budget either. It could have happened at any time. So I think that in itself sends a wrong message to the public. The cost of $7,500 was never believable to me, and that in itself made me very suspicious that if a better justification could not be made than that, then maybe it needs to be, maybe it was suspicious all along. Can't help but wonder. In fact, Councilman Scrivener, I think it was you that said that that it kind of makes you wonder if the staff can get along without those 800 hours, then you can't help but wonder if maybe they're overstaffed. I don't know that that's the case, but the 2 floating holidays with about 400 employees would be 800 lost days of productivity, and I think that is a significant cost. Comparing the city's holidays to the state holidays, I don't think it's fair to look across the community and cherry pick, what benefits you want. I think that I'm convinced that the city does have very good jobs with good salaries, good benefits, good retirements, and tuition reimbursement. And I will add that tuition reimbursement was kept in the budget this year. We did not find it necessary to delete tuition reimbursement. We have several employees still taking advantage of that, and I'm very happy for them. I started working with city employees probably 25 years ago with Parks and Rec, with the baseball teams and the football teams and the basketball teams, and then I also went to work for Parks and Rec when I started refereeing basketball, and the city was good enough to give me games. Every single city employee that I encountered has been superior. Always, always very impressed with the quality of the city employees. And over the years, I continued to work with the city with committees and commissions, and finally to this point, sitting on the city council. Any opportunity I have, I brag on the city staff. I think they are outstanding. I think they are excellent. I believe the floating holidays is a wrong thing to do. I think it's a bad idea. I think it will be costly, and I will be voting against it.
I had Rick first.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call the question.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion's been made to call the question, which ends debate if we vote in favor of this, so there's no discussion on that particular motion. All in favor of calling the question and ending debate on the floating holidays, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Chair will feel that that is a vote in the affirmative, that we're now calling the question. Would you agree, Drew? Okay. With that being said, we will have, is that right, Drew? Roll call vote on 2013-63 as substituted.
Branch,
No.
Bray,
No.
Carroll,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
No.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Nay.
Prather,
Nay.
Schulte,
Nay.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Motion fails 6-4. Next we'll move into...
Mayor, and I don't know, I have comments. I know we called the question, but I do want to comment on that particular bill. So when can I do that?
I'll ask Drew.
I think there's a spot at the end
At
to-
the
for
end.
council.
Okay. Put me
discussion on
down.
present-
Put me down
yeah.
at the end.
Where at, Drew?
Generally, when that's been done in the past, it would be under 20. We've kind of opened that up, but it's not technically, I suppose, wouldn't fit the agenda. We have historically allowed discussion on that. So I'll
On
leave it up
20.
to the mayor, right?
Is that right?
That's I'm fumbling around saying, yeah.
So 20 is what you're trying to say?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So 20, we could have more comments on that. Next, we'll have third reading of 2013-64.
an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a development agreement with Roar Real Estate 2 LLC and James R. Morris.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our agreement with Morris LLC, and he's got a number of subsidiaries that are a part of this as well. And I referenced this project earlier. Mr. Morris is intending to build a manufacturing company, and this is an agreement that we have to make that happen. It is contingent on the both the county agreeing to their end of this and the chamber agreeing to sell them the real estate. Both those actions are waiting on the council's final action. Morris intends to take advantage of the enhanced enterprise zone, which abates some property tax. That's nothing we've got to do with, but it is part that they're particularly interested in with the county. We agree to add a sewer line directly to the property, which again costs something less than $20,000, with exact cost to be determined, of course. And in exchange, they agree to build the facility, which is about at least $3 million, and initially employ at least 20 employees within 1 year. If business goes well, they will ask the city and county to add a rail spur to that project, which we will do. In an exchange for the rail spur, they will contribute a portion of the cost of the rail spur. We, the city and the county, will then split the rest, which I think is estimated for our end to be about $100,000. And again, this comes out of the sales tax contingency for economic development. If we do that, they will add an additional 10 employees at a minimum of $17.50 per hour. They hope to get to 41 employees, and they believe that they'll spend $4 million on the project. we agree to expedite the filing of any necessary paperwork, so zoning amendments that they might need, uh, construction plans. They will still go through our process, but we agree to expedite those things. We don't want to be the holdup on the problem. So staff believes this is a good thing, adding some jobs to the community, which we need, and we ask for your approval.
Any questions of Drew on 2013-64? Drew, behind the scenes, I do want to thank you for all the work that you've done with the county and obviously the chamber and these developers getting this going. And there's been several late night phone calls, even a couple Saturday mornings or two I had to call on you, and I appreciate that. Ken.
Just a quick point, the Chamber Board of Directors did approve the sale of the property a week
Okay.
ago, and so that action's taken place
Very good.
already.
Good
I
deal.
believe this is on the commission's agenda for tomorrow.
I would imagine so. They normally follow pretty close. Any comments or debate on 2013-64? Seeing none, ready to vote? Roll call, please.
Bray,
Aye.
Carroll,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Branch.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll go into the informal calendar. And the first bill on the informal calendar is 2013-45. And the sponsor of that is Councilman Scrivener. What's your pleasure, sir?
We're gonna leave it on the informal calendar.
All right. Does that go without objection? I always forget that.
It stays on unless 6 council people vote to the
Okay.
opposite.
So at any time, it can come back out if enough people want it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it can, or Councilman Scrivener can take it off anytime. he
Okay.
wants.
All right. Everybody fine with that? All right. So that stays there. 2013-46. Miss Carroll.
Informal.
All right. On the informal calendar, 146, or excuse me, 46. Moving on, 2013. I can't read this number. Is it 51? 51. Mr. Schulte.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove Bill 2013-51 from the informal calendar for discussion and a vote. Thank you.
Okay. Any objections? Okay. I guess, Drew, do you want to? Well, actually, it says Nathan here. Are any comments there? I mean, we've all kind of been here through most of it.
Yeah, I'll answer any questions anyone has. I think it's all pretty well understood.
I tell you what, just to make sure, let's have a third reading, just to make sure we're good to go.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri adopting a budget and personnel classification plan for the city for the period of November 1, 2013 to October 31, 2014, and appropriating money in the city treasury to pay the cost of operating the city government during that period in accordance with the budget.